We're continuing our series, Stuck, and today it's in Stuck in Relationships. And I get to read a story from John 4, 1 through 26, about the lady at the well that you guys are all familiar with. And also, if you read your scripture throughout this past week, you're very familiar with it. But let me read the story to you. Jesus realized that the Pharisees were keeping count of the baptism that he and John performed, although his disciples, not Jesus, did the actual baptizing. They had posted the score that Jesus was ahead, turning him and John into rivals in the eyes of the people. We don't know about rivals, do we? So Jesus left the Judean countryside and went back to Galilee. To get there, he had to pass through Samaria. He came into Sychar, a Samaritan village that bordered the field Jacob had given his son Joseph. Jacob's well was still there. Jesus, worn out by the trip, sat down at the well. It was noon. And a woman, a Samaritan, came to draw water. Jesus said, "Would you give me a drink of water?" His disciples had gone to the village to buy food for lunch. The Samaritan woman, taken aback, asked, "How come you, a Jew, are asking me, a Samaritan woman, for a drink?" Jews in those days wouldn't be caught dead talking to Samaritans. Jesus answered, "If you knew the generosity of God and who I am, you would be asking me for a drink, and I would give you fresh, living water." The woman said, "Sir, you don't even have a bucket to draw with, and this well is deep. So how are you going to give this living water? Are you a better man than our ancestor Jacob, who dug this well and drank from it? He and his sons and livestock, and passed it down to us," Jesus said. "Everyone who drinks this water will get thirsty again and again. Anyone who drinks the water I give will never thirst, not ever. The water I give will be an artesian spring within, gushing fountains of endless life." The woman said, "Sir, give me this water so I won't ever get thirsty, won't ever have to come back to this well again." He said, "Go call your husband and then come back." "I have no husband," she said. "That's nicely put. I have no husband. You've had 5 husbands, and the man you're living with now isn't even your husband. You spoke the truth there, sure enough." "Oh, so you're a prophet? Well, tell me this. Our ancestors worshipped God at this mountain, but you Jews insist that Jerusalem is the only place for worship, right? Believe me, woman, the time is coming when you Samaritans will worship the Father neither here at this mountain nor there in Jerusalem. You worship guessing in the dark. We Jews worship in the clear light of day. God's way of salvation is made available through the Jews. But the time is coming, it has in fact come, when what you're called will not matter and where you go to worship will not matter. It's who you are and the way you live that count before God. Your worship must engage your spirit in the pursuit of truth. That's the kind of people the Father is looking out for. Those who are simply and honestly themselves before Him in their worship. God is sheer being itself, spirit. Those who worship Him must do it out of their very being, their spirits, their true selves, in adoration. The woman said, "I don't know about that. I do know that the Messiah is coming. When He arrives, we'll get the whole story." "I am He," said Jesus. "You don't have to wait any longer or look any further. I am He."
Hello? Hey, don't worry about it. I'll fix it in a second.
He said he can fix it. All right. All right. That's more like it. He says he can fix it.
Life is Well, good morning. My name is Joel. I'm the teaching pastor here at The Gathering, and welcome to our second week in the series we're calling Stuck. We're meeting people all month long who were stuck. We met Nicodemus last week who was stuck in religion. We're going to meet people who are stuck in their circumstances. We're going to meet people who are stuck in their pursuit of stuff. We're going to meet people who are stuck in their sins. And today we're meeting someone who was stuck in relationships. Stuck in all of the past relationships and the wreckage of those in her life. And Paula just shared this morning, just a few minutes ago, that whole story from the book of John. And it's a beautiful story. If you haven't heard it, or if you've read it this week, or if it's one you've heard 100 times, we're going to take a peek at that today. We're going to jump throughout the verses today. That's why I had Paula come and give you the whole story. And so let's put on our spiritual running shoes, because we're going to go through a lot of different places today and see this story of Jesus meeting her in her stuckness and showing her that there is an alternative. There's two things that we need to note right off the back about this story. The first one is it phrases it. John puts the story in Samaria. He says that Jesus left Judea and he was going again to Galilee, and he had to go through Samaria, it says. Samaria is a part in Palestine. Palestine, the region that Jesus was in, where he spent his entire life, that's given to us in the Gospels, is only about 120 miles long. So it's not a very big area. And it was broken in Jesus' time into three places. You had Judea at the top of this 120-mile long country. You had Galilee, where Jesus was from, at the bottom, and right smack dab in the middle was Samaria. And it says that he had to go through Samaria. Well, good Jewish boys, and that's what Jesus was, a good Jewish boy, and all of his friends were good Jewish boys. You didn't go to Samaria. That's literally for them the other side of the tracks. You didn't go to Samaria. You went around Samaria. You didn't go there to visit. You didn't go there to work. You didn't go there to buy food. And you sure as heck didn't travel straight through it. Because Samaritans, and we meet one in the story today, Samaritans were descendants of Jews, but they were ones who began to intermarry with other countries around them. And Jews didn't do that. The Old Testament law said, don't intermarry. You marry a Jew. If you're a Jewish boy, you marry a Jewish girl. If you're a Jewish girl, you marry a Jewish boy. You don't intermarry. It was said that was against all. It was an abomination, is what the Old Testament tells us. But the Samaritans did it nonetheless. So not only had they broken the law, they had intermarried. And so to the Jews, these people were crossbreeds. They were mutts in their minds. And they hated them. And the Samaritans hated the Jews right back. And so when you had to travel that way, what the Jews would do is they would actually go the long way around. Instead of going through Samaria, which was actually the easiest and fastest way, they went the long way and actually had to cross the Jordan River 3 times. So it's interesting that John tells us that Jesus had to go through Samaria. It wasn't just that he went to Samaria, it says he had to. Well, there's other ways, so he didn't have to. There wasn't a reason that he had to. He could have gone a different way, just like everybody else did. It's a little inconvenient, but that's the way you went. So when John tells us that Jesus had to go through Samaria, it wasn't because of geographical reasons. It was for divine, sovereign, spiritual reasons. Jesus was drawn there. He was drawn there because of someone who was stuck. There's a divine mission that he's on. And even to this day, he's on a divine mission to meet people, connect with people, love people who are stuck. And John tells us that he had to go through Samaria, and he gets there finally to this town called Sychar, and it says that he was tired, and he sat down at a well, and it was the 6th hour. Now, he was tired, so it shows his humanity. He sat down at the well because that's where you got water from, and it was the 6th hour. The Jewish workday was 12 hours long. That's how they measured time. So the 6th hour means it was smack dab in the middle of that day. It was high noon, the hottest, driest part of the day. It was actually the time of day where everybody stayed inside and took a little break from work. This is when they did their lunch and their siesta, and they got away from it for a little while. But we find Jesus there. And all of a sudden, he's not alone. It says that this woman comes to the well. It doesn't name her, but it says that this Samaritan woman comes to the well. Now, this seems perfectly normal, right? Because you go to the well if you need water to drink, you need water to cook, you need water to clean, you need water to do laundry. So it makes perfect sense, right? But there's more to the story. See, we have to remember what she's doing, and we have to realize where she's doing it at, and we have to recall the time of day. She's getting water, which is exhausting. She would actually bring 2 huge jars that were heavy enough without water, and then she would fill them with water, and she would walk it back. In fact, this well, Jacob's well, that we learn about in the story, was a half a mile outside of the town of Sychar. Archaeology has shown us that there were actually wells in the town and closer to the town. There were ones that were more convenient to her. So for some reason, she's choosing this well a half a mile away, a half a mile back in the middle of the day, the hottest part of the day. And a time where people are resting. She's walking, filling up these jugs, and carrying them back home. And it's no abnormality that she's showing up this day. She's probably doing it day after day after day after day. So the question is why? Why would she come at this point of the day to that obscure well when there were ones that were closer, ones that were more convenient, and do it at the beginning of the day like all the other women did? It's because she was avoiding people. She was avoiding people. She was trying to do it at a time where she could be alone and not be bothered. Because we learned she's got a story. And it's a story that people didn't really like. She was that girl that people looked at and then looked away. Or looked at and rolled their eyes. Or looked at and shook their head. Or just avoided altogether. And then when she was passed, they could start whispering about her when she went by. Every time she went by, they're like, oh, there she goes. There she goes again. And as I wrote that this week, I started thinking about this song, and I feel stupid bringing it up because, I can't even remember the name of the song or how the words go or even how the music. That's it. That's the song that's been stuck in my head all week. This is so convenient. There she goes. There she goes again. Racing through my brain. And I just can't contain this feeling that remains. There she goes. There she goes again. Pulsing through my veins. And I just can't contain this feeling that remains. There she goes. There she goes again. Racing through my brain. And I just can't contain this feeling that remains. Take it, Ken. There she goes. There she goes again. She calls my name, pulls my train. No one else could heal my pain. And I just can't contain this feeling that remains. There she goes. There she goes again, chasing down my lane, and I just can't contain this feeling that remains. There she goes. There she goes again. There she goes. There she goes again. Yes! I'm so glad you guys are up here. I'm glad you sat up here the whole time. Don't you hate when that song gets in your head and you don't have a band to play it? I'm so glad I did this morning. Hey, we'll be at the Holiday Inn all week, okay? You guys can come and see us. Tonight, we meet this woman. She is the one that everybody's like, there she goes. That's her. They knew her story, they knew her past, and they wouldn't let her get away from it. And this woman is hiding something. This woman is stuck, so much so that she goes down to the well on the far end of town. She goes out of the town. She goes past the walls. She goes at the worst time of day. She does it alone. Because when we are stuck, a lot of things happen to us. The first thing that happens to us is that when we're stuck, it's inconvenient. When we're stuck, it's painful. When we're stuck, it's embarrassing. This woman goes at an inconvenient time to an inconvenient well. She's doing heavy, hard, laborious work. And she was doing it all by herself. This is a life that's stuck. This is a life that is stuck. But all of a sudden, this day, at the far well, a half a mile away, in the middle of the day, when nobody's supposed to be there, she shows up and a man is sitting there. And he looks at her and he says, "Give me a drink. Give me a drink." This man, Jesus, takes the initiative. And when he does, he's breaking social and religious rules. Nicodemus, who we met last week, he would have, first of all, never even gone into Samaria. But if he had been drugged there, handcuffed, as soon as Jesus talked to a Samaritan woman, Nicodemus would be like, "Nicodemus, out." And he would have gone. I can't be around this. But Jesus takes the initiative. Jesus is looking to her. Jesus wants to speak to her. And he's not embarrassed. He's not hostile. Jesus can't be this way because Jesus himself was never stuck. But he loves those who are. And so he asks for a drink. And in verse 9, it says that she talks back to him. She speaks back. It says, the Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you are a Jew and you ask me for a drink, a woman of Samaria? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans." She talks back to him. It wasn't enough that he broke religious and social customs. She broke them too. And I think it's because she didn't want to be stuck anymore. Being stuck is something that she doesn't want in her life. And maybe, just maybe, there's another answer. William Barclay, whose writings have kind of helped me shape this whole series, and I've been reading him and as I prepare for each Sunday together here, he wrote this. "Here was the Son of God, tired and weary and thirsty. Here was the holiest of men, listening with understanding to a sorry story. Here was Jesus, breaking through the barriers of nationalism and Orthodox Jewish customs. Here is the beginning of the universality of the gospel. Here is God so loving the world, not just in theory, but in action." He answers her. He says, "Give me a drink." She says, "How can you ask me for a drink?" And then he says, "If you knew who was asking and the water that they could give you." It's not just that being stuck is something she doesn't want. We see something here that being stuck is something Jesus doesn't want for her. In fact, being stuck is something Jesus wants for none of us, for no one. This woman, we see her and she is wanting, she is searching, she is empty, she is thirsty. And she doesn't even realize it. She doesn't fully get that yet. But Jesus did, because John tells us he had to go there. He had to go to this country. He had to go to this town. He had to go to this well, a half a mile outside of that town. He had to go in the middle of the day to a well that was incredibly deep because she was there. He knew she was physically stuck. He knew she was emotionally stuck. He knew she was relationally stuck. He knew that she was spiritually stuck. Because nothing takes Jesus by surprise. Nothing. Not her situation, not my situation, and not your situation. And he offers her an answer. He offers her an answer. It's not that she was physically or emotionally or relationally or spiritually stuck. He says it's all of the above. When I was in 10th grade, I got invited to go to an SAT prep course. Sounds like a pretty hot date, hot party. Let me tell you, I was invited by Sandy Douglas, who was dreamy. And she said, I'm going to the SAT prep course. Why don't you come with me? Here's how dumb I am. I didn't know what the SAT was, let alone there was a prep course for it. It's probably why I got a 7 on it, okay? But at the course they said, when you're not sure, go with letter E. So you know what I did on the SAT? E. I just drew a line all the way down them. Go with E. That's what Jesus is doing here. I'm just going to go with E, lady. You're physically, emotionally, relationally, spiritually stuck. And when he offers her water, when he says, if you realize who's asking you for water, who can give you water, who can give you living water, cisterns of water, he's talking about it in the Jewish sense. The Samaritans were from Judaism. That was their roots. But because of the decisions they've made and the mistakes and the sins that they committed, they grew away from it and they kind of had their own take on Judaism. And it was one that was their own set of rules and their own set of guidelines, and it didn't work that well for them. So when Jesus says, I'm offering you water, he's talking about how they would view water in Jewish customs, not drinking physical water. He's talking about something much greater, much more life-changing, much more quenching to the person. When he says living water, he's talking about water that shows a deep thirst for God, for knowing who he is and connecting to him. This is an answer for her, and it's an answer for all of us who are stuck. It's an answer to help us get unstuck. And we got to remember that the pattern, I introduced this last week, the pattern of how John gives these stories of Jesus communicating with people. And it shows up here in ours today in John chapter 4. It's where Jesus says something, and she misunderstands. So Jesus says it a little bit more clearly, and she still misunderstands. Because there are certain truths which we cannot accept, we must discover them for ourselves. And that's what he wants for her. And that's what he wants for you. And she says in verse 15, "Sir, give me this water." She wants it. She doesn't want this lifestyle of going to the well on the far side of town, going at the middle of the day, going alone. She wants the water. Like, if it's as good as you say it is. See, she doesn't fully grasp what Jesus is offering. She doesn't fully grasp what Jesus is saying to her. But she's starting to discover for herself. She's putting the puzzle pieces together. But we know from her story that there's still work to be done. There's still discoveries to be made. There's still insights and realities that have to be faced. Because the truth is this: to not be stuck, we must face up to why we are stuck. If being stuck is something that we don't want in our lives, just like her, just like I have in the past, and just like many of you here today, we have to face up to why we're stuck. Why are we stuck in this place? So Jesus asks her a question, another question. He's good at those, isn't he? And he says, go get your husband. Go bring him back. Go get him. Where's he at? Get him over here. And she says, I have no husband. You know what she's doing here? She's like, I'm going to slide by this one. I'm going to offer him the truth because I don't want him to really know the truth. I have no husband. She's like, woo, got that one by. Now back to this water you're telling me about. And Jesus goes, that's right. You don't have a husband. You've had 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the one she's living with now, he says, is not your husband. This woman was a reality show before reality shows were hip. If this woman was here today, she would have her own show on Bravo. The Women of Sickers Wells. Tuesday nights on Bravo. Right after Dog Catchers, Portland, Oregon, and something about going to pawn shops, be right there. The Women of the Wells, there she is. 5 husbands, and the one she's with now isn't her husband. She thought she was going to get past that little sticking point, wasn't she? And Jesus kind of lowers the boom because nothing takes Jesus by surprise. Not with her, not with me, and not with you. But when he catches her, when he confronts her stuckness, he's not doing it in a, I got you. All right, now we can really, really make you feel terrible. Because he's not coming in hostility. He hasn't all along. He's just simply sitting at a well, wanting a cup of water. What he's offering her here is a confrontation that I think and I believe takes her with some relief. Because sometimes being caught is the very best thing that can happen to us. We've tried so long to sort it out, to work it through. We've tried so long trying to make it work on our own power and our own schemes and our own ideas that when we're finally caught, we can take a deep breath and be like, I wish I had the guts to say this out loud, but I'm just glad somebody knows now. Because being stuck is inconvenient. It's painful. It's embarrassing. And that had always been her life. Jesus confronts her stuckness. He confronts her immorality. He confronts her looseness. He confronts her inadequacy. He caught her. And maybe that's not such a bad thing. Now she is forced to face herself, that she is stuck in relationships. She's stuck trying to bring these men into her life to fill a gap, to fill a void, to fill a hole, to give her love. She's finally trying to see that these things don't make her her. She has a revelation of who she is. In Christianity, there's two revelations that we have to face up with. Whether we've been in church our whole life or we're checking it out this week, there's two revelations that we have to see. The first one is this, the revelation of God. This person that we praise and sing and pray to and talk about, his word we read. There must be something about him, otherwise we wouldn't be wasting our time. The second revelation is this, the revelation of ourselves. Is what I'm doing going to measure up? Is what I'm doing going to make it work? Am I going to be good enough? Am I going to have enough? We have to face these two revelations. And that's what this woman is doing here. This woman had spent her whole life up until this point filling a hole, filling a void, filling a gap. And every time she came to get water alone in the middle of the day, it was a reminder of the fact that she's stuck in relationships because she can't come when all the other women come because she's that girl. She can't come with her husband because she doesn't have one, because she keeps running them through her life and they keep using and abusing her. It was embarrassing. It was painful. It was inconvenient. Every time she came to this well, it wasn't just to get physical water. It was a symbol that she's trying to fill up a heart that's leaking. When I was 10, I went away to summer camp for the very first time to Camp Piankatank on the shores of the mighty Rappahannock River in Tidewater, Virginia. Growing up in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., we didn't go camping and canoeing. We didn't do those things, all right? We lived in town. The only grass we saw was our front lawn, and that wasn't very big. So to get to go away to camp and do things like camping and fishing and archery and the gun range and go canoeing was a big deal for me. So the first day of canoes, I was so excited. And we get down there, and they didn't really say much. They said, Joel, there's your canoe. Here's your life vest. Here's your oar. And they just pushed me out into the Rappahannock River. Off I went. I knew nothing about canoes, especially the fact that they take on water. It comes in over the side, and there's like a little valve at the bottom that lets water out because it'll come in there because it's a big open boat. But it doesn't go out very fast. So I'm like, I'm sinking! My canoe's going under. Like I was going to die. I was like, why isn't anybody helping me? Why is nobody freaking out? I'm taking my oar and trying to shovel water out. I'm like kicking it out. I'm bailing it out with my hands because it kept leaking in. This Samaritan woman, this is the story of her life. She's living life and it's leaking. And she tries to plug it with a relationship, but it keeps leaking. And then she tries to plug it with another relationship. I'll get it right this time. Keeps leaking. I'll try to plug it with another relationship, another husband, a boyfriend, a fiance, another husband. And it's just leaking. There comes a moment for everyone when they must realize that the life they're living will not do. It won't work. Trying to plug that hole with relationship after relationship is a life stuck. They say that insanity is doing the same thing again and again, expecting a different result. And that's what we see here. A woman who is insane when it comes to relationships, thinking it's gonna fix the problem in her heart, in her soul. It doesn't have to be this way. We must awake to the reality and choose. Am I going to show a need for more relationships, more men, more women, more boyfriends, more girlfriends, more fiancés? Or am I going to express a need for God? This is the choice for her. Need for more or need for God? This is the choice for you and I. Need for more or need for God? Because she was at a place where she could have gone back up the path to Sychar. This crazy man at this well, he sort of knows what's going on. It's kind of freaking me out. I'm just going to take the water I have and go right back to town. That was her choice. And there's a choice that's for you and I. I'm tired of talking to the large sweaty man at the front who breaks into song all of a sudden. There's the exits out of the theater. It's your choice. But she stayed, and I hope that you stay, because she's sensing that maybe there's an answer here. Maybe the water he's talking about is not water to do my dishes or my laundry or cook my food or drink. Maybe the water he's offering is a water that can wash me clean in a way that I've never felt and experienced. To not be stuck, we must face why we're stuck. And she finally starts to face up to it. And she faces up to it in a pretty interesting way. She gets all spiritual. I don't know if you're surprised by that. I'm not. It's why we're here, right? Even if you've never come and checked us out before. Maybe if you're looking online and you've never really come and looked at what we're doing, you're like, oh, they're getting spiritual. Of course they are. We're a church. And it's because we believe that there's spiritual answers for the stuckness in your life. We believe that there's a spiritual answer for this woman, for me, and for all of us here today. She starts to get all theological. She goes, I can see that you're a prophet. A prophet is somebody who tells you a message directly from God. And it can be overwhelming and offsetting sometimes, but you're glad that there's truth. You're glad that there's an answer finally. And she goes, I can see that you're a prophet. She goes, you know, my ancestors said we'll worship on these mountains. But your ancestors, the Jews, say you have to worship in Jerusalem. She gets kind of spiritual, but she starts to get off track here. She's making it about a place. You have to specifically go to this place to worship. So we see that not only is she stuck in relationships, she's stuck in religion too, isn't she? She would have benefited from last week. Somebody pick up the CD for her and mail it to her when we're done today, okay? She's stuck. And Jesus sees that she's finally starting to get it, and he offers her another answer. Jesus says that when you worship, you must worship in spirit and in truth. You must worship in spirit. He's like, you've got this, lady, because you're still hanging in the conversation. You're a spiritual person and you're sensing that. Those of you today that are hanging on listening to me, it's because there's some spirit inside of you that's moving and drawing you closer. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in this place. You wouldn't be listening to this. But Jesus says that not only do you worship in spirit, he says you must. Emphasis on must. There's no way around this. We must worship in spirit and truth. She has to face up to who she is. She has to face up to where she is. She has to face up to what she can be. And so do you, and so do I. We have to face up to who we are, where we are, and what we can be. Because the way we're doing it, it's not working. Plugging holes with relationships, thinking that maybe this time I'm going to get unstuck. Maybe this time I'm going to fix it. Not seeing the fact that relationships with others can never replace relationship with Jesus. Doesn't matter if you've been married for 100 years, you've been dating the most wonderful girlfriend, you've got the most sexy boyfriend, that you've got the most perfect fiance. As wonderful as they are, they can never replace relationship with Jesus. He wants to know you intimately. He wants to be near you. He wants to strengthen you. He wants to take your burdens. And she finally starts to get it, and she says in verse 25, I know that the Messiah is coming, he who is called the Christ. And when he comes, he will tell us all things, like who we are, like what we've done, like how we worship, like what we can be. And Jesus takes hold of her faith. I don't even know if she knew how faithful her words were, but Jesus did, because nothing takes Jesus by surprise. And he pours out on her 7 words that change her life, 7 words that will change all of us. He says, I, who you speak to, am he. I'm him. That prophet, that Messiah, that's me. Surprise. That one you're talking about, that one that you get that you know is going to make you unstuck, guess what? He's sitting at this well, and I'm still thirsty. Where's the water lady? That's the KJV, the King Joel version. He says, I am he. I'm that Messiah. I'm your Messiah. I want to change your life. I don't want you to be stuck. I love those who are stuck, and I love to see them unstuck. I am more than your need. I am more than a well. I am more than a religion. I am more than a relationship. I am he. She realized that he was a prophet, and he springs on her this unbelievable truth that he's not only a prophet, he's a priest. And he's a king. In the book of Hebrews, it describes Jesus this way. In fact, there's 3 chapters in Hebrews that's all they talk about, how Jesus is prophet, priest, and king. And the very first person in the history of time that got to truly experience it was this woman. Just like Nicodemus got John 3:16 for him, this woman got to see that Jesus is prophet, Jesus is priest, Jesus is king. As a prophet, he told her. As a priest, he led her. And as a king, he saved her. And guess what? He can do it for you as well. Will you pray with me? God, thank you for Jesus, for his unbelievable love. I don't deserve to be loved the way that he loves me, but he does. We don't deserve it, God, but we're so thankful. And Father, I pray for all those here under my voice today or watching online who are stuck. And I pray that they sense a great love from you. It's not hostile, it's not judgmental, it's simply compassionate, filled with mercy and grace. And I pray, Father, that in that mercy you reach out to them. You reach out to those here today who are stuck, plugging that gap in their life with a relationship after a relationship. Never seen that the relationship they need most is the one that Jesus offers them. So be their prophet, be their priest, be their king, and change their lives. And we are grateful, those of us here who've had their lives changed, that you've done that for us. Thank you for being a good and loving God and sending a great and graceful Savior in Jesus. It's in his name I pray. Amen. So glad you guys are here today. I want to invite you next week to come and be part of our 3rd week in the Stuck series. We're going to be talking about being stuck in circumstances. So we've done religion, we've done relationships, and next week we're going to meet somebody who is stuck in a painful circumstance. And maybe you're writing off, you're like, the religion part, that, that's not me. But you're like, yeah, I'm definitely stuck because the bills are piling up. Or the job interviews aren't changing things, or, our family continues to struggle. Maybe it's falling apart and it's painful. And I want to introduce you next week to somebody in John chapter 5 who is stuck in a circumstance and Jesus showed up and changed everything. So your homework next week, or this week, is to read John chapter 5. All right, been in 3, now 4, and next week we're going to 5. Read that just a couple of times. It's not a very long chapter. It's a great assignment, a great chance for you to get in, start digging through that, and read that for yourselves. All right, everybody got it? Oh, and invite a friend. Okay, you guys have a great week. We love y'all. God bless.